I thought it was just another first date until she showed up with her friend. From that moment, nothing went the way I expected. Sometimes the right person enters your life at the worst possible time, and you have to decide whether to follow reason or your heart. Hello, you're watching True Lean, real stories with real twists. Let's get started. My name's Floyd. I'm 25, born and raised in North Carolina, and right now I live just outside Raleigh in a small rented apartment above a bakery. I work in HVAC, heating and cooling systems, mostly helping folks fix what breaks when it's either freezing or boiling outside. It's a solid job. I'm not rich, but I get by. And I like that every day feels a little different. A few months ago, after a long stretch of being single, I finally decided to try dating again. Not that I'm bad at it. I just got tired of the whole small talk and ghosting cycle. But one night, while scrolling through an app, I matched with a girl named Yvonne. She was 22, worked part-time at a local bookstore, and her bio said she loved quiet coffee shops and rainy mornings. That line hooked me. We started chatting, and honestly, it felt easy. She wasn't trying too hard. She asked about my work, my hobbies, and sent a few sarcastic jokes that made me laugh. After a week or so of messaging, I asked her out for coffee. She agreed, but when she said, "Mind if I bring a friend?" She's been bugging me to get out more, I hesitated. It wasn't exactly what I had in mind for a first date, but I didn't want to seem uptight, so I just said, "Sure, no problem." We picked a little cafe downtown. It's one of those places with soft music, mismatched furniture, and the smell of roasted beans hanging in the air. I got there 10 minutes early, nervous, but ready. Then I saw them walking in, Yvonne in a beige sweater, looking just like her pictures, and beside her was Marie. She was older, maybe late 20s, with that confident, relaxed way of moving that instantly changes the room's energy. They sat down, and the first few minutes were awkward. Yvonne seemed quiet, almost shy, barely looking up from her latte. Marie, on the other hand, started talking right away, asking me where I worked, how I liked the city, joking about how she always ends up being the third wheel. I laughed, but something about her tone told me she was completely comfortable being there. As the minutes passed, I noticed myself leaning into the conversation more with Marie than with Yvonne. She was funny, sharp, and curious about everything. When she laughed, it wasn't polite. It was real, like she meant it. Yvonne just smiled softly, occasionally nodding, but never really jumped in. Halfway through, I caught myself glancing at Marie's hands while she talked, at the way she tilted her head when she listened. I quickly looked away, reminding myself, "You're here for Yvonne, man. Don't be an idiot." But it didn't help much. The chemistry was too strong to ignore. At one point, Yvonne excused herself to take a call outside. It left me alone with Marie for a few minutes that felt strangely charged. She smiled and said, "You're doing fine, by the way." Yvonne just gets nervous around new people. I smiled back, trying to sound casual. "Yeah, I noticed. She seems nice, though." Marie stirred her coffee and looked at me with this half smile. "She is just different from me." When Yvonne came back, the conversation never really picked up again. She seemed distracted, checking her phone while Marie kept the atmosphere alive. By the time we were leaving, I felt torn between guilt and fascination. Outside the cafe, Yvonne said, "It was nice meeting you," and gave me a polite hug. Marie waved and added with a smirk, "Maybe I'll see you around." And for some reason, that line stuck with me all the way home. That night, as I sat on my couch replaying the evening in my head, I realized something that bothered me more than it should have. I'd gone on a date with one girl and couldn't stop thinking about the other. The next morning, I woke up still thinking about that awkward coffee date. I told myself it was fine. It was just one of those mismatched first meetings where the chemistry doesn't click. Happens all the time. I figured Yvonne probably felt the same way. By noon, I got a text from her. "Hey Floyd, it was nice meeting you yesterday. You're really easy to talk to." That was it. No smiley face, no suggestion to meet again, just polite, distant. I replied something short. "Yeah, same here, good seeing you too," and left it at that. Honestly, I didn't plan on thinking about her again, but a few hours later, I got a notification from Instagram. Someone named Marie D had requested to follow me. My heart skipped for a second. I clicked her profile photo. It was her. Same confident smile, same brown eyes. I hesitated. It felt wrong, but curiosity got the better of me. I accepted. Seconds later, a message popped up. Hey, HVAC guy. Hope I'm not crossing any lines. Just wanted to say it was fun talking yesterday. Yvonne gets nervous on first dates. Don't take it personally. I stared at the screen for a while. That mix of humor and ease, it was exactly what had made her stand out that night. I wrote back, no worries. You two are really different, that's all. She answered, yeah, we've been friends forever, but opposites in every way. I just wanted her to get out and meet someone decent. You seem like one. That line hit me strangely hard. I wasn't used to being described as decent. I kept typing and deleting messages, trying not to sound too eager. Eventually, we started talking. Nothing flirty, just casual stuff, work, favorite movies, the weather. But there was something about the rhythm of our conversation that felt natural, like we'd known each other for a while. That evening, we kept messaging until after midnight. She told me she worked as a dental hygienist, loved hiking on weekends, and had recently broken up with someone who never listened. I told her about my job, how I spend most days in people's attics or basement fixing things that no one notices until they break. She said, that sounded oddly heroic. I laughed at one point. She wrote, I know this sounds weird, but I feel like we talked more last night than Yvonne did the whole date. I didn't know how to respond. She wasn't wrong, but admitting it felt like betrayal. So I sent a half joke. Maybe you should have been the one I asked out. She replied instantly, maybe. For a moment, I just stared at that word. Maybe. It lingered in my mind long after I set the phone down. I tried to convince myself that it was just friendly banter, nothing serious. Still, before going to sleep, I checked our chat again 3 times just to reread her last message. The next day, I caught myself checking my phone at work, waiting for her to text. Around lunchtime, she finally did a photo of her morning coffee with the caption, guess I'll drink this alone again. I laughed quietly and wrote, you could have invited your new HVAC buddy. She answered, careful, Floyd. I might take you up on that. It was the first time I felt the shift, the kind of spark that starts small but refuses to die down. That night, Yvonne sent another message, short and formal. Hey, I'm going to be busy the next few weeks, so probably can't hang out, but it was nice meeting you. No emotion, no follow-up. That sealed it. I wasn't going to push something that clearly wasn't mutual. But Marie, she kept writing. Every night, our conversations got longer. She told me about her favorite trail near the lake, about her rescue dog named Milo who hates thunder. I told her about fixing my neighbor's heater at midnight once because I couldn't stand hearing the guy complain. And through it all, that strange guilt followed me like a shadow. I knew I shouldn't be this invested. It wasn't how things were supposed to go. I'd gone out with Yvonne, not Marie. Yet, I couldn't stop smiling every time her name popped up on my phone. A week passed like that. Then one evening while we were texting, she wrote, I wasn't even supposed to come that night. Yvonne begged me to tag along because she was nervous. But honestly, I'm glad I did. I sat there in silence, reading that line over and over. Something about the honesty in it made my chest tighten. I typed slowly, yeah, I'm glad you did too. That was the moment I knew I was in trouble because for the first time in a long while, I actually wanted to see someone again. And it wasn't the girl I was supposed to be thinking about. It had been about 2 weeks since that first date. By then, Marie and I were texting almost every day. It wasn't like we planned it. It just happened naturally. I'd wake up to a message from her, something small like, hope your coffee is strong today. And by the end of the night, we'd still be talking about music, bad dates, or random things like how she once tried to dye her hair red and ended up looking like a traffic cone. I knew it wasn't right. Every time her name popped up on my screen, there was a part of me that said, this isn't your place. But another part, the louder one, kept reminding me how easy it felt to talk to her, how good it was to laugh again. One Saturday morning, she texted heading to the farmer's market downtown. You ever go? I told her I'd been once or twice. She replied, you should swing by. It's sunny and they've got those homemade lemon pies you said you liked. It sounded innocent enough. I convinced myself it was just 2 friends running into each other. When I got there, the place was packed. Families, couples, people walking dogs. The air smelled like roasted nuts and fresh bread. I was scanning the crowd when I heard her voice behind me. Didn't think you'd actually show. She was wearing a loose white shirt, sunglasses, and her hair tied back in a ponytail. Simple, but she looked effortlessly put together. We walked between the stands, talking about everything and nothing. She bought a small basket of strawberries and handed me one, saying, "Try this. Way better than the store kind." We stopped for coffee at a corner stall, and that's when she told me something that made my chest tighten. Yvonne didn't actually plan that date herself, she said, stirring her drink. She's been through a rough breakup, and I kind of pushed her into it. She asked me to come so it wouldn't feel too serious. I looked at her surprised. So she wasn't even sure she wanted to go. Marie shook her head. Not really. She's sweet, but she's scared. I think she's still figuring herself out. I sat there trying to process it. It made sense now. The awkward silences, the lack of eye contact, the way she kept looking at her phone that night. I felt guilty, but not for the reason I should have. It wasn't about Yvonne anymore. It was about how much I wanted to be sitting there with Marie like this without any unspoken rules hanging over us. At one point, she said softly, "You're quiet." I smiled, just thinking how weird this is. You and me here. It feels like we skipped some steps. She laughed quietly. Maybe, but it doesn't feel wrong, does it? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The look between us said enough. After coffee, we walked toward the lake. The sunlight was bouncing off the water, and a light breeze carried the smell of pine. We sat on a bench, still talking, still avoiding the truth that hovered right between us. Then she said something that I'd never forget. Sometimes the right people meet at the wrong time. You know what I mean? I nodded slowly. Yeah, I said. I think I do. The silence after that was heavier. We both looked away, pretending to watch the ducks in the water. My hands were resting on my knees, and I noticed hers were just inches away. I didn't move. Neither did she. When it started getting late, we walked back to the parking lot. Before getting into her car, she turned and looked at me for a moment. "This was nice," she said quietly, "even if it shouldn't have been." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. Yeah, it was. She smiled a little, then got into her car and drove off. I stood there watching the taillights fade, feeling like I just stepped over a line I couldn't see, but I knew it was there. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her sitting across from me, laughing, the sun hitting her face just right. I replayed every word, every glance, every second of that afternoon. It wasn't a date, not officially, but deep down, I knew it was more than it should have been. I picked up my phone twice that night to text her, but I didn't. Instead, I scrolled back through our old messages, reading them from the start, seeing how something small and harmless had slowly turned into something I couldn't explain. And for the first time, I admitted it to myself quietly, almost like saying it out loud would make it too real. I was falling for her. It happened on a Wednesday evening. I had just come home from work covered in dust after spending the whole day fixing an old furnace. I dropped onto the couch, checked my phone, and saw a message from Marie. "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. Those 4 words never mean anything good. We met that night at the same coffee shop where everything had started. She looked tense, hair tied up, hands wrapped around a cup she barely touched. When I sat down, she didn't waste time. "Yeah, knows," she said quietly. I blinked. Knows what? That we've been talking for a second. I didn't even breathe. "How?" I asked. Marie sighed. She saw one of our messages. I left my phone on the counter while she was over at my place. It wasn't even bad, just us talking about that farmer's market, but she put it together. I leaned back, staring at the table. Guilt hit like a wave. I hadn't done anything technically wrong, but it didn't feel innocent either. What did she say? She was upset, Marie said softly. Not yelling, not crying, just disappointed. She said it felt like a betrayal. That word stung. Betrayal. I rubbed my face and tried to find the right thing to say, but nothing sounded right. "I never meant to hurt anyone," I muttered. "I know," Marie said, her voice low. "Neither did I. But maybe we both crossed a line without realizing it." We sat there in silence for a while. The cafe felt colder than usual, the music quieter. Everything between us suddenly felt heavy, complicated. Finally, Marie looked up at me. "I think we should stop talking for a while, at least until things calm down." I opened my mouth to protest but stopped myself. She was right. It was the only responsible thing to do. Still, the thought of not hearing from her again made my chest tighten. "Yeah," I said quietly. If that's what you think is best, it's not what I want, she said, eyes glistening. But it's what needs to happen. When we left, we didn't hug. We didn't say goodbye. She just walked in one direction and I walked in the other, feeling like something important had ended before it ever really began. The next few days were strange. My phone felt too quiet. I'd catch myself opening Instagram, scrolling through her photos, then closing it again like I was doing something wrong. Work didn't help either. I made mistakes, forgot tools, zoned out during jobs. My friend at work, Jared, even asked if I was okay. I told him I was just tired. One night I sat on the porch watching the streetlights flicker and tried to make sense of everything. I kept replaying that first date with Yvonne, wondering how differently things could have gone if she'd come alone. Maybe I wouldn't have met Marie at all. Maybe my conscience would be clean. But then again, would I rather have never met her? I couldn't answer that. A week passed, then two. No texts, no calls, just silence. One evening, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I opened it. It was Yvonne. Hey, Floyd, I just wanted to say I'm not mad anymore. I just needed time to figure things out. I hope you and Marissa are okay. I stared at the screen for a long minute. You and Marie, the way she phrased it made it sound like we were together, which we weren't, at least not officially. I typed back, thanks, Yvonne. I'm sorry things got messy. You didn't deserve that. She replied almost instantly. It's fine. I think maybe you two were meant to meet anyway. Life's weird like that. That message hit harder than I expected. There was no anger in her words, just honesty. Maybe she understood more than I gave her credit for. That same night, as if the universe was listening, another message came in. This time from Marie. Yvonne moved to her sister's place for a while. I didn't know who else to tell. Maybe we should talk. For a full minute, I just stared at it. The part of me that had tried to move on suddenly woke up again. I wanted to hear her voice, to understand what she was thinking. But there was also fear. Fear that we'd only hurt each other again. After pacing around the apartment, I finally typed back, okay, when and where? She answered, same cafe, tomorrow 7. I didn't sleep much that night. My mind ran in circles, wondering what she wanted to say, what would happen next, and if I was ready to face it. The next evening, I walked into that familiar coffee shop. The same corner table, the same smell of roasted beans. Marie was already there waiting. She smiled faintly when she saw me. It wasn't the easy, carefree smile from before. It was softer, sadder, but somehow warmer too. As I sat down, she said, thanks for coming. I nodded, of course. There was a long pause before she finally said, I think we both learned something through all this. Yeah, I said quietly, that feelings don't care about timing. She smiled at that. Just a small one, but real. For the first time in weeks, the tension between us started to lift. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't about guilt anymore. It was about what we were going to do next. When I walked into the cafe that evening, I already knew something had changed. The last time Marie and I were there, it had been full of guilt and silence. But that night, there was something quieter in the air. Not tension, just honesty. She was sitting at our usual table by the window, a cup of tea in front of her, hands wrapped around it like she was holding onto something warm and fragile. When she looked up and saw me, her eyes softened. Hey, she said, barely above a whisper. Hey, I replied, sitting down across from her. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. Outside, people passed by carrying grocery bags, walking dogs, living their ordinary lives. Inside, it felt like time had slowed down just for us. I've been thinking a lot, she finally said, about everything that happened. About Yvonne, about you? I nodded. Me too. She smiled faintly. I told myself I wouldn't text you again. But after Yvonne left town, it just felt wrong not to say something. I didn't want it to end like that. It didn't have to, I said. But maybe it was supposed to happen this way. She looked at me for a moment, then exhaled. You're probably right. There was a long pause, the kind that only happens between people who've already said all the important things, but still don't want the moment to end. Finally, she said quietly, you know, from the very first night, I felt something I wasn't supposed to. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was just being friendly, but you made me laugh, and it had been a long time since someone did that. I didn't interrupt. I just listened. She continued, When Yvonne introduced you, I thought you were just another guy she'd talk to for a week and forget. But when we started talking that night, I felt this pull. I don't know how else to describe it. I smiled. Yeah, I felt it too. Marie nodded, staring into her cup. And that's what scared me because it wasn't supposed to happen. We sat there in silence again, letting the weight of it all sink in. Then she looked up, her eyes meeting mine. So what do we do now? I thought for a moment. We stopped pretending that what we felt was wrong. It was messy. Yeah, but it was real. She smiled. A real one this time. Soft but full of meaning. It was. I reached across the table, hesitated for a second, then took her hand. She didn't pull away. Let's just take it slow, I said. No secrets, no guilt. Just see where this goes. She nodded. I'd like that. For the first time since all of this started, it felt like the air between us was clear. No pressure, no games, just two people admitting what was already obvious. We stayed there for hours talking about everything we'd avoided before. Family, work, the small stuff that didn't matter to anyone else, but meant something to us. At one point, Marie laughed at something I said, and that laugh, the same one I remembered from the first night, made me realize how much I'd missed her. Before we left, she said, Yvonne will come around eventually. She's stronger than she thinks. I just hope she understands we never meant to hurt her. She will, I said. She already does. Outside, the sky was fading into that soft evening blue. We walked to our cars side by side, not saying much. When we reached hers, she turned to me. You know, she said quietly, I don't believe in fate, but maybe this was supposed to happen, just not the way any of us expected. Maybe that's what fate really is, I said. The wrong timing that somehow ends up right. She smiled, stepped closer, and hugged me. Not a long, dramatic hug, just the kind that feels like home after a long time away. That was the moment I knew. Whatever this was, it was worth seeing through. Over the next few months, Marie and I started spending more time together. Slowly, carefully. We'd grab dinner after work, take walks around the lake, help each other with little things. She'd drop by when I was fixing something at home, bringing coffee or a bag of groceries. It wasn't perfect, but it felt right. There were still awkward moments. People who knew both her and Yvonne asked questions. Some looked at us with raised eyebrows, but we didn't hide anything. We weren't ashamed. Eventually, Yvonne came back to town. One Saturday morning, I saw her at a small bookstore downtown. For a second, I didn't know what to say, but she smiled first. Hey, Floyd, she said gently. Marie told me you two are seeing each other. Yeah, I said. I hope that's okay. It is, she replied. I always thought you two made more sense than we did. We talked for a few minutes. Nothing heavy. When she left, I felt this wave of peace, like the last piece of the puzzle had finally clicked into place. Later that day, I told Marie about it. She smiled and said, I told you she'd understand. Then she reached for my hand and added, so, no more wrong timing. I shook my head. No more. That night, as we sat on my porch, watching the sunset fade behind the trees, everything felt calm. Not the kind of calm that comes from having no problems, but the kind that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And that's how it ended, not with a grand gesture or dramatic twist, just two people who met by accident, hurt no one intentionally, and somehow found each other through the mess. It wasn't the story I planned, but it became the one I'll always remember. Sometimes love doesn't arrive in the package we ordered. It slips in through the side door, wearing the wrong name tag, and dares us to choose authenticity over expectation. Floyd's story aches with that truth. A first date meant for Yvonne became the unintended spark with Marie, her bold, laughing friend who turned small talk into something electric. Guilt shadowed every message, every stolen glance at the farmer's market, yet the heart refused to lie. What felt like betrayal was actually clarity, messy, human clarity, that connections can't be forced into neat timelines or polite boundaries. The real twist? Yvonne's grace in letting go, proving that true kindness releases what was never meant to stay. This tale whispers a raw, emotional lesson. Follow the pull that makes you laugh until your sides hurt. that lingers in quiet silences without needing words. Life's detours aren't punishments. They're redirections toward people who see you fully, even when the timing screams wrong. In a world of swipes and scripts, dare to honor the unexpected spark. It might just be the universe rewriting your story into something beautifully real. What's your moment when the wrong person turned out to be exactly right? Spill the tea in the comments. Your stories fuel this community. And if Floyd and Marie's journey hit you in the feels, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell. Trelene drops real-life twist